Welcome back, and we're continuing to look at this whole issue of revitalizing your church. And we're going to continue to look at the issue of what it means to raise the power of expectations in your church. And here's what I'm going to do in this particular module. I'm going to get a bit more specific. There will be some overlap between what I said in the previous module, but I want to make sure that you have some hooks, or to change the metaphor, to have some tools to understand how you can raise expectations in your church. Now, I understand that some of what I gave last time gave you those hooks, but I want to really deal with specifics. And what I'm going to do this time is just give you 10 of those. And so when it's all said and done, you'll be able to say in your church, here's something that I can use today. Now, let's review where we went from the previous module, the awesome power of a high expectation church. I talked about how churches for the last 50 so years have been low expectation churches. We've gone through that historical phase. I offered some places where expectations are raised, such as the pulpit, the new members class, small groups, informal conversations, website, greeters ministry, parking lot, facilities, newsletters, raising up heroes who are doing ministry, testimonies, the time of offering, and all of those examples we tried to give some particulars to it. But this is the video. This is your module. Again, I'm really glad to be a part of your consultation. I'm really glad to be here with you because I haven't had the opportunity to be in many churches where I've done a consultation lately because of my job with Lifeway. But this video is offering me the opportunity to be in your church, or to be with you in your study, or maybe as a staff that's coming together to watch it. And I really can just sense that there are going to be people who are watching this video and they're saying, we can apply this to our church. We can do these things in our church. You know, when I was a pastor, and again, you go back several years to when I was a pastor, I was at the tail end of that low expectation phase, where you really did not, in many churches, really have any grasp of what it meant to be a part or a member. You would simply let someone join and fill out a card, and that was pretty much it. In some churches, they walked an aisle. There were different ways that it happened, and quite frankly, what we asked for is what we got. And that is why today, over half the people who are members of churches, well over half, don't even show up in their churches. They're not even coming to the primary worship service. So I gave those examples just to try to tell you, here are some things that you can look at the onset. Now, it's time to get into some more specific examples. Some of it will overlap from the previous module, but I want to add to that, put a little more meat on the bone, so to speak. I want to be able to share with you some things that other churches are doing to raise the bar of expectation. Now, you would fully expect, if you've been following with me to this point, that I'd be talking about the high priority of a new members class. If you haven't gotten that, you probably haven't listened to the other videos, you haven't watched the other videos, and because I've said that is one of the critical areas about raising the bar of expectation. Don't forget that we're using the metaphor of a stool, a four-legged stool. And the stool, the seat itself is revitalization, and one of those legs to the stool is expectations. What are some specifics that I can offer about a new members class, even before you go into the bonus video? Well, first of all, you have to offer them on a regular schedule. In some churches, there could be a frequency of people who are desiring to join or find out about joining the church, and you need them every week or maybe every month. In some churches, it's every quarter. In some churches, it may be 2 or 3 times a year. But you need to have that on a regular schedule. It needs to be an important part of the church calendar. You need to be announcing that ahead of time. Any of those of you who are interested in becoming a part of our church, or even finding out more about our church, here is when the next new members class, or whatever you want to call it, 101, inquirers class, the list could go on and on. You need to have that on a regular schedule. You do not need to be offering it haphazardly, because if it's offered on a haphazard basis, what you're communicating is it's not important. And if you're trying to raise the bar of expectations, you better say that the new member class is important, because that's where you are raising the bar of expectations. So go on and make certain that it's on the calendar, that it's given a high priority in the church life, that you're announcing ahead of time in the announcements in the worship service and the newsletter and other venues, that you're communicating on and on when that new members class is going to take place. We've got some fairly new findings about the most effective times and days. It is not statistically verified, but it's good anecdotal information. And here's what we're finding. We're finding that the most effective day, believe it or not, is Sunday. People see Sunday as a day where they're supposed to be at the church facilities, so the most effective time is Sunday, or the most effective day, I should say, is Sunday. And some churches are actually offering it during a time of Sunday school or small group. Others are waiting till maybe the early afternoon and having a meal. But we're finding more and more that Sunday is the time because people expect to be at church on Sunday. And it's quite frankly easier to get people there on Sunday. We have a busy schedule. Again, I'm not suggesting that the busy schedule should have priority over the church, but some people work every day of the week. Some people work at nights, on weeknights. The most common day that you can have available that most people can come to is Sunday. And typically that is Sunday morning or either Sunday afternoon. Again, if you have a new members class and it's effective on another day or an evening, that's fine. But we're finding more and more of churches are moving to Sunday. Now, about this issue of time, I'm not talking about the time of day. I'm talking about the length of time. Let me tell you how most new member classes started. They started off as multiple days with multiple hours and multiple days. Frankly, I was a part of a new member process. If I recall correctly, it went over 3 nights and each night was 2 or 3 hours. So it was 6 to 9 hours total. And even though I retained some of the things from that new members class, I didn't retain a whole lot. The reality of it is most people are going to only retain a few things from a new member process. You can communicate more to them later after they become involved in the life of the church, but the essence of it is if you try to give them information overload, they will actually learn less. So you need to ask the question, what are the major things that they need to learn? And again, we've put them in 3 different categories. Information about the church, expectations about their membership, and attitudes that they should have coming in as a church member. So the new findings that we have found is that Sunday is becoming the more common day. If you've got another day that's working, that is fine. And typically a length of these is around 3 hours, no more than 3 hours, usually a break in the middle, sometimes 2 breaks, and you give them the essence of what you want to give them, and perhaps you even give them additional information digitally so that they can look at that later. So Sundays, around 3 hours. Again, that's not etched in stone, but that is the new information that we have. Again, a reminder, we have a bonus video available now. It's here. It's that you can see the link at the bottom here. It's available for you, this bonus video on how to have a highly effective new members class. We're going to go through 8 steps. We're going to go through 8 steps about how to have the best new members class. I think you're going to absolutely love the information because I have emphasized it so much that you say, okay, I'm ready to put it together. This will be your map. This will be your map and your toolbox both, using mixed metaphors to construct this new members class. And we're glad to provide that for you, and you'll have it at, now at this video. So what else? What else do we need specificity in? Number 2, raising the bar in the process of discipleship. Now, what do I mean by that? The process of discipleship is something that we will start talking about in the next module. And remember, expectations are one of the legs of the stool. Another leg is a clear process of discipleship. That clear process of discipleship, you will learn, includes expectations about what is involved in the process of discipleship. You should be involved in worship. You should be in a small group. You should be in a ministry. You should be a cheerful giver. And the list could go on, or you could choose different parts of it. So understand that as we go into simple church, which is equated with the process of discipleship, as we look at that leg of the stool, that will be a necessary overlap, and indeed it will be a part of expectations. It's where the two connect together. So keep that in mind when we start the next module about the process of discipleship and what that looks like. 3, I talked about preaching and expectations. There is no place where you can communicate more quickly, more poignantly, and more powerfully what it means to be a part of a body of Christ, what it means to be a church member, than the pulpit. The pulpit is the place where in those 25, 30, maybe 45 minutes, longer for some, that so much of what the church life is all about is heard. It's central. Preaching is central. The act of the sermon is central. If a pastor concludes a sermon and that pastor has not communicated clearly what this means as a follower of Christ, then probably the passage has not been dealt with fully and completely. The pulpit can be a place where you're constantly reminding this is what it means to be a part of the body of Christ. Almost any text, almost any topic, almost any issue that has a biblical foundation will give us further instruction about what it means to be a part of the body of Christ. And so this is my exhortation to you pastors. You pastors, as you are preaching the text, whether you do it expositionally, topically, narrative, whatever your approach to preaching may be, as you go through that sermon, be thinking, how am I communicating to these church members what this means for them? That raises the bar of expectation. So you're not only doing exposition, you're doing application as well. And that application raises the bar. Well, I talked about the website, and I think I almost went off on a tangent on that. And in the future, we're actually going to be providing some video material about a website and developing this whole realm of communication in your church. But for right now, we just want to talk about the website. Keep in mind that the website for most of your guests is your first impression. I've said that earlier, and I've said that again. Now, think about someone that you have met. And the first time you meet them, whether you want to or not, you immediately have expectations about what that person's personality is, what their disposition is. Is that right? You meet someone and they're friendly and jovial, and you say, oh, that person is friendly, that person is outgoing, I'd really like to be around them. You get around me, I'm an introvert. And you'll probably find me in the corner in some type of social gathering, and I may even actually be facing the corner. And if you tap me on the shoulder and you ask the question, who are you? I'll turn around and I'll be very reserved. And you'll say, well, that guy's probably a jerk. So I got to do something about my first impressions, because I come off as I am, almost shy and introverted. Your website is the first impression. What does it say? Does it tell a guest what time the services are? Is that clear on the homepage? Does it give them directions on how to get to your church with a clear address that they can put in their GPS? Does it tell them something about the church? Are there some links about upcoming sermons, and are there links about the staff and maybe some of the things in the life of the church? Does it communicate clearly to that person coming to the site? The reality of it is, for the most part, the people who will more frequent your site are really your guests more than your members. There are some exceptions to that, but most of the time, it is guests who are coming to your site. The reality is that more often than not, it's a guest that's visiting your website. Some church members will go to try to find out what the next sermon is or what the next event is, but that's really where guests are. That is your point of first impression. That is where you raise the bar of expectation. I would encourage you, once again, at the risk of redundancy, to have someone who knows how to do a good website, to have someone to proof it, to make sure it's grammatically, stylistically correct, that it looks good, that it's attractive. That hardly costs anything these days. And to have it in a place where a guest can come and find all the information that he or she may need. Now, there's another issue about raising the bar of expectations, and that's social media. Now, social media has a breadth of implications. It could be a blog, it could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be LinkedIn, it could be Pinterest. The list goes on and on and on. There are so many places that we call social media. Well, the church needs to pick one or two. And if it's a small church, it may be a Twitter account just to tweet out those things that are taking place. It may be a Facebook page. But there needs to be some connection with the world of social media. Because quite frankly, if you're not in social media, people are going to think that church is not doing much. It has become a common vernacular. It has become the language of many people. And so you're really not being a missionary church if you're not in some form of social media. So choose the form of social media that is most adaptable to the church, most acceptable. Perhaps the one where your church members will connect. I know that in many churches they begin with Twitter because it's just a few characters. It's 140 characters. Is that right? It is 140 characters and that's it. And it allows them to just say things about the church in a few brief messages. Others like Facebook. Whatever it is that is a starting place, make sure that your church is there. And here's just a little hint about raising the bar of expectations. It is better to do one place of social media well than to try to do multiple places of social media poorly. So choose one that, maybe that can be a ministry of a member in a church. Even if your church has 20 or 30 people, there's probably someone in the church that can take on the Twitter account. There's probably someone in the church that can do the Facebook and keep it active and meaningful. So social media tells people that this church understands this world. This church understands this culture. This church understands me. And it raises the bar of expectation. So have at least one form of social media connected to the church. Now here's something that's probably a little bit controversial. The sixth issue is what you measure is what you get. Now, what do I mean by that? For many years, the primary measurements in churches were attendance and money. And so the big things that became the most important were attendance and giving, because that's what got measured. That's what people saw. In my denomination for many years, one of the common metrics that was common really up until about the last decade was Sunday school attendance. And so therefore that small group called Sunday school was very important. Understand this, what you're reporting to the church in terms of metrics is communicating to the members of the church what is important. I am not arguing that money should not be important. I'm not arguing that worship attendance should not be important, but are there other metrics that you should be communicating? We're going to be talking about that when we look at the process of discipleship and maybe asking the question, not just rhetorically, maybe in a way that you need to answer, are there other areas that we should be measuring? Because measurement gives the clear communication. It says this is what we expect. Now, here's something else that is just so important in expectation. Every leader, pastor, staff member, lay leader in the church should be mentoring someone. Mentoring is powerful. Now, what do I mean by mentoring? It can go in a multitude of definitions. It can be a period of 3 months or 6 months where you take on for a defined period where you're just going to walk alongside someone, study the Bible with them, do ministry with them. It can be a time of informal relationship. It can be open-ended, but it's intentionally connecting to someone. It's intentionally saying, I'm going to take you under my wing. I'm going to take you as someone that I'm going to help you grow as a disciple of Christ. Now, why is that so important to raising the bar of expectation? Should be pretty clear. As you communicate to that mentee, the person that you are mentoring, what's important, you're raising the bar with him or her about this is what our church or this is what ministry is all about. I have been so grateful for those men who have taken me under their wings, those men who have spent time with me, and even though it may have been for a defined period of time or an open-ended, casual, informal relationship, have invested in my life. And they have told me through their actions and through their love of me what's really important in the church. If you can just have a dozen leaders leading in a church of 100 or 10 leaders leading in a church of 30 or several hundred in a mega church, it is absolutely incredible how that raises the bar of what it means to be a part of the body of Christ. So one of the hooks that I'm giving you is you leaders, take on the mentoring task. Learn, it does not have to be formal, but spend time with people with whom you invest your life. That raises the bar of expectation. Now this is one, number 8, daily Bible reading plan. This is one that is often overlooked or minimized. Many churches in their church bulletin or their newsletter or their website, they have, these are your daily verses for today, but no, very few people pay attention to them. Very few people actually say, okay, I've got to be reading these verses. But I'm going to share something with you that I think is absolutely revolutionary in revitalizing churches on that one leg of the stool of expectations. This discovery from a statistical point of view was initially made by Brad Wagner in research that he did for the International Mission Board and in a book that he published called The Faith of Shape to Come. And here's what he reported. He talked about corollaries, which means not necessarily causation, if you do this, then this, but the most common thing, the most common element about a person who is growing as a disciple, that was witnessing to more people, that had a more vibrant prayer life, that was more faithful in the church, the most common thing was they were reading the Bible daily. They were reading the Bible daily. And so it is critically important not only to have an encouragement of a daily Bible reading plan for your church, not only to have it laid out for them if they want to use the suggested daily Bible reading, but to continue to emphasize it from the pulpit, from small groups, from every venue that you can. There should be a constant repetition of, have you read your passage in the Bible today? Or have you read the Bible? I remember my pastor one time, as he continues to emphasize this, he says, look, if you don't do anything else, read one verse. Just read one verse. Just get back in the Bible. And of course, most people will read more than one verse once they take the time to open it. Again, critically important to raise the bar of expectations, daily Bible reading. 9, define the minimum expectations. We'll get into that more in Simple Church or the process of discipleship, but it begins in the new members class. And what I mean by that is, what do you really expect at a minimum? We often talk about MVP, minimum viable product, minimal viable product. And we talk about that as this is the first thing that we want to release. Well, what is the minimum viable expectations of members of your church? Now, I'm not going to decide that for you. But what is it you want to communicate? Okay, we expect you minimally to be a regular attender of worship. Do you want to add small group to that of some kind? I would suggest it. Do you want to add involvement in at least one ministry during the year? I would add that. Or perhaps you want to talk about stewardship or giving. What is the minimum expected involvement that you have of your church members that should begin, discussed, emphasized in the new members class, and it should continue as we talk about the process of discipleship? So we'll be moving from one leg of the stool, expectations, to the next leg of the stool, process of discipleship, and we will see more about that. Finally, I mentioned this at different points, use a greeter's ministry effectively. That communicates so much about how important the church is. If you have people out greeting, if you have people, and I mentioned even the possibility of having them in the parking lot, weather allowing, and you have those who are just saying, welcome to our church, it is amazing what that does to the attitude of the church, and attitude affects expectations. And so what I've done is I've given you these ideas, these hooks, if you will, to say, here are some ways that you can raise the bar of expectation. But let me also say this, unleash the power of prayer toward expectations. Don't just leave it at these hooks. Have people praying for more people involved in ministry. Have people praying that there would be a more sense of God's gathering and people attending the worship service. Have people praying that others would join their small group. Unleash the power of prayer toward expectations. So, we're almost done with this one leg of the stool. We're going to come back in a little ways and summarize it all, but I want you to know before we start going to the process of discipleship that we've covered a lot. So let's talk about what we've learned in this module. I've given you 10 examples of raising expectations in the church. New members class, redundant again and again. We looked at them being offered on a regular schedule, and I talked about how many of them, more of them are offered on Sunday for about 3 hours at a time. We again, emphasize, make certain that you look at your gift, your bonus video that we've given you in this delivery, so that you can look at the details of implementing an effective new members class. We said raise the bar of expectations in the process of discipleship. That will be a good segue to our next module when we go into the process of discipleship in Simple Church. Talked about the power of the pulpit and how that is such a focused time to communicate what God's people should be about. We've taken a good time to talk about the website and how that's first impression. The church being involved in social media, Twitter, Facebook, and the list goes on and on. A reminder, and we'll continue this when we start talking about the process of discipleship. What you measure is what you get. That's what you say is important. We talked about the incredible value of every leader mentoring someone. Maybe it's 3 months here and then wait a few months and then someone else for 3 months, but at least on a consistent basis, mentoring someone. I've given you data to give you the correlative relationship and daily Bible reading, people growing toward spiritual maturity. That raises the bar as well. Said that you should define minimum expectations. These are the bare necessities of what we believe a member should be doing. And again, on several different occasions, I've talked about using the greeters ministry effectively. And we summed it all up by saying, unleash the power of prayer to raise the bar of expectations. And that could go in so many incredible different directions. Wow, we've covered a lot. It's almost like I've been in your church consulting for days now, and I've been sharing with you some things that you could do. And even though I may not know the specific context, this consultation has allowed you to apply some things in your context. And I've really only gotten to the first leg of the stool, the leg of expectations. But we're going to be talking about that next leg, and we're going to be talking about the process of discipleship and Simple Church. And so the next set of modules that will be delivered to you, the next set, you got 3 more coming, we'll be talking about Simple Church and revitalization. I have been told, and this is anecdotal from many people who've spoken to me, that they cannot wait for this portion because Simple Church was so impactful in their lives. And they want to know how it connects to church revitalization. As I've indicated, it is critically important to church revitalization because Simple Church is a model, not the model, but Simple Church is a model for the process of discipleship. So here's my encouragement to you. Take a break, stretch your legs a minute, maybe wait a couple of days, review the material, go back over the PDF downloads that you've gotten, maybe listen again on audio, and then get ready to go to the next leg of the stool. This is exciting stuff, folks. We are looking at the major areas where churches are being revitalized. And we've now covered fairly in depth that leg of the stool of revitalization called expectations. Are you ready to go to Simple Church or the process of discipleship? Well, I know that I am, and I look forward to seeing you because this is some of my favorite parts of this entire consultation. I look forward to being with you. I look forward to being in your church, and I will see you in the next module.